Starfield just had one of its biggest announcements to date. We're also going to go over some unique in-game mechanics that players are finally just noticing, and a couple ship customizations that were kind of overlooked, as well as a brief history of kind of the Starfield development and how it got to where it is today. We got a lot to talk about. What's up, world? We're back in another video. Today we're checking out all things Starfield. So first up, let's just jump right into it. And we did actually have an announcement for the Xbox Showcase and Starfield Direct, and their length, which I think is the most important part of this, as we figured out the kind of split between what the Xbox Showcase will be in lengthwise and the Starfield Direct. This was tweeted out by Tom Warren, but the Xbox Showcase and Starfield Direct is going to be around 2 hours in length, and it will probably be 90 minutes for the main show, and there's going to be 30 minutes just dedicated for Starfield, which is actually really good to hear that they're focusing so much on Starfield, because this is a big major release, and I doubt that Xbox has anything really else to showcase for their first party titles, seeing as games like Halo Infinite and others haven't been doing so well. So hopefully with the acquisition with Bethesda, we do end up getting a much better first party title. Although again, I've never been a fan of exclusives to any platform, but PC does get Starfield as well, so I don't have too much to complain about. Now, people went back to Fallout 4 for an example on kind of the timing, and they said that 30 minutes is going to be plenty enough time, as Fallout 4 had a nice little vertical slice, and it was quite short. Someone else did bring up a fairly good point, and I always want to talk about my sources, or where I get these sources from, and kind of what their credibility is. So I know in one of my previous videos, I had a lot of people talking about, oh, this person's not credible at all, although they were pretty accurate. Regardless, this guy is not a Microsoft employee. He is just a journalist, so this is just some insider information. Just wanted to clear that up, just in case it's not exactly 30 minutes long. It might be 28 or 25 minutes compared to the rest. However, again, it is nice to hear that Starfield will have a dedicated section, and it also kind of aligns with not a lot of game releases this year, aside from some of the bigger ones like Diablo, etc., but those are more from Blizzard, and the whole Microsoft acquisition with Blizzard hasn't really gone through yet. And we also did get some ship information, or at least a point out in one of the trailers. It looks like that we're going to be able to actually configure our interior, and doing so you'll be able to configure the habitat module, which is just essentially where the player will live and house, so you'll be able to customize that. It looks like from this image, as it says here, the Demos habit module comes in a variety of different interior configurations. Cycle through the variations to choose the best one to suit your needs. Again, I don't know if you guys ever played Outer Worlds, but this game feels very like Outer Worlds upscaled to the nth degree. So being able to customize your ship is nice, and I know like people talked about how the ships are going to be like able to board each other and all that stuff. Outer Worlds had the same sort of kind of interaction. However, the ships didn't pull up to each other, and you didn't see any sort of animation, but you did talk to other ships. Again, this game does seem very reminiscent of like an Outer Worlds being upscaled with a AAA studio, as Outer Worlds was just declared a AA game, as their funding was a lot less. Although I loved that game, and it was quite fantastic, and if you haven't played it, I would definitely check it out. And we do have some other ship pictures here, and I guess apparently they do come in a lot of different sizes, so that's nice also to note. Whereas in here there is a 1x1 habitat, and the other image here with the ship is a 2x1x1. So maybe the way you level, or even maybe you can choose to have a bigger area. We'll kind of see how that is showcased in the Xbox Showcase. Now, if you remember back to when Todd Howard got on, he just did like an interview video. He had some gameplay up in the background, and fans have figured out some of the gameplay mechanics that you can kind of see. So you can check out the sprinting here, which looks like you'll also be able to kind of sprint diagonally, as well as that the weapons are actually going to be holstered as well, and you can kind of see that in the footage. And I actually really do like the sprinting animation, and the frame rate looks so much better than the original trailer. That was one of my biggest gripes. Now, I knew that it was probably being played on an Xbox, so for PC I wasn't too concerned with the frame rate being an issue. However, it is probably more likely a port, and so the PC one is always going to be a concern, especially with Hogwarts Legacy and the recent ports like Last of Us Part 1 being so terrible on PC. There's definitely a concern there, but it looks like it's running absolutely fantastic, and it even looks like it's running on an Xbox, so they definitely have been polishing these last few months. I also feel like the gunplay and the combat switching looks a little more fleshed out and just a little bit more smooth with animations. Again, my biggest gripe back then was the frame rate, and the bullets and everything kind of looked a little bit janky, but here it actually showcases some pretty good footage. footage. But moving on to the development period of Starfield, because a lot of these things are very interesting. In fact, Todd Howard talked about wanting to make a space RPG for years, basically over a decade. And not only has he thought about the idea of a space RPG, but this game has been in development for over 7 years. And usually that's either a really, really good sign or a really, really bad sign. But from everything we've seen so far, I do not have any real doubts about anything. You know, typically when game development is in development that long, a lot of times they rewrite the entire game over and over and over again. They keep doing it. It happened with Roller Champions, and they rewrote that game 3 times, and it completely ruined the game. The game was dead after a week, and it was just kind of sad. We actually have another comment here that's really interesting, but it points out that Todd Howard said that the tech gap between Fallout 4/76 and Starfield is a much bigger leap than between Morrowind and Oblivion. Now, I never did get to play Morrowind, but I did play Oblivion quite thoroughly, and looking back at the Morrowind footage compared to the Oblivion footage, that is quite a technical marvel. But also they pointed out, for reference, the leap between those two games was enormous. Oblivion introduced ragdoll physics and allowed to physically pick up and manipulate almost everything. Which, yeah, that was always so cool. You could like pick up like little scrolls on the table and move things around and kind of play around with people, and like if you down somebody, you could pick them up and move them around. That was always amazing to me. I mean, I loved Oblivion. That was like one of my favorite games of all time. And Morrowind apparently had none of that. All the items were very static. You could just pick them up, put them in your inventory. It was not that you could move them around like you did. Morrowind also didn't have any ragdoll physics either. So to note that this is going to be a much bigger technical gap and technical marvel than what between those two games were, this might be the true space game that everybody wanted. It almost seems like a No Man's Sky combined with an Outer World. Now, Outer Worlds had an incredible storyline, and it's fantastic. As I said previously, you should definitely go check it out. But to know that this game might have both mechanics, essentially being able to visit all these planets, and they did say that they're somewhat procedurally generated, which of course, I mean, there's 1,000 planets. I'd hope that they had some type of automation getting those up and going. There's no way that they'd be able to create that many atmospheres and dynamic environments like that. Another person pointed out that with Oblivion, they also had a daily schedule script for every NPC, which is something that Morrowind didn't offer, and a lot of new games don't really even offer that. I mean, even though I like Cyberpunk, they never had a daily schedule script for any of the NPCs, or at least most of them. They would just like walk to one end of the sidewalk and walk back. That was kind of like one of the memes for it. So a game from all the way back then, being able to have that sort of daily schedule and all of that with NPCs, and current games still aren't capable of that, it's pretty impressive. And people meme on Bethesda a lot with the whole kind of "it just works" Todd Howard meme. However, I really do think Bethesda's going to pull through with this one, and it's not going to be a flop like Fallout 76, although I did still enjoy Fallout 76. I just think that they went kind of where they weren't supposed to go. They definitely weren't ready for a multiplayer, fully fledged experience like that. But that does about cover for today's video, and if you like it, like, and subscribe. Until the next one. Deuce.